Mr. President, I want to join with my colleagues. I appreciate what the senator from Tennessee had to say about our former President Ronald Reagan as we look upon his 100th birthday coming up here this weekend, and all of us pay tribute to the legacy that he gave this country, the tremendous contributions that he made during his time in office. And we all have different, I think, remembrances and associations with his presidency. I was a sophomore in high school when he was elected to his first term as president back in 1980. I should say sophomore in college, and it was the first election that I had the opportunity to vote in. So I guess you could say I was sort of coming of age about the time he was coming on the national political stage. He, of course, had run for president 4 years earlier. But I remember just as a young person who was beginning to pay a little bit of attention to politics at the time, being so impressed with a number of the qualities, the attributes, I think, that characterized him personally, and which were primarily responsible for the tremendous success that he had as a president and for the great legacy that he leaves behind. And I was someone who grew up in a small town in South Dakota and had parents who, my father and mother had both come through the Great Depression, so they were very similar in terms of their remembrances of that period, and could really identify in many respects with some of the things that President Reagan talked about. But he was a person of strong convictions. He had a strength of conviction, I think, that was really appealing to a lot of Americans. He was someone who believed in American exceptionalism. He understood that the greatness of this country wasn't in its government institutions, but in its people and its ideals. He was someone who was willing to confront the threats that we faced around the world, and the way that he took on the threat of communism and promoted freedom and democracy around the globe is something for which he will always be remembered, not only here at home, but by other countries around the world. And I think that he possessed, in many respects, a lot of the qualities that we value in the Midwest. He was a very humble person. I think his humility is something that really stood out. He was always referred to just Dutch Reagan, and his growing up, his formative years, and the impact that he had on this country, I think, was because he saw himself as just an ordinary American like every other American, and he was able to connect with and identify with the challenges and the opportunities that were facing Americans across this country at the time. I think he also possessed, although he was the governor of California, a Midwestern sensibility that never left. He had, in many respects, values that, as I said before, that many of us in the Midwest find really important. And his belief that you ought to live within your means, his sort of Midwestern bedrock values of individual responsibility were things that he always touched upon, and themes that he referenced in his remarks. Those are the types of qualities, I think, that really differentiated him on the national stage. And I remember, too, as a young person, being impressed with his sense of humor. And I think too often today, these are serious matters that we deal with, matters of great gravity and great weight, and they need to be taken with the right level of seriousness. But he also was able to see the best in people, and to use his sense of humor to, I think, connect with people about what was really distinctive and what really unique about America. I remember the story that was told while we were fighting the Cold War about the guy in the Soviet Union who went in to buy a car, and he said, I want to buy a car, and the guy at the transportation department said, well, you can have your black sedan and you can pick it up 10 years from today. And the guy thought about it for a minute. He said, will that be in the morning or the afternoon? And the guy at the Transportation Bureau said, what difference does it make? It's 10 years from now. And the guy said, well, because I've got the plumber coming in the morning. And Ronald Reagan, I think, had a way of putting into very simple and understandable and sometimes humorous terms what was so distinctive and unique about the American experience. And that's something, I think, also that really set him apart. When it came to the big issues of the day, he had a statement that he made that I quote, and he said, there are no easy answers, but there are simple answers. And I think oftentimes we face these complex problems, and we overanalyze a little bit. And the truth is, and a lot of the challenges that we face today, not unlike the times when he was president, There are not easy answers, but I believe there are simple answers, Mr. President. And I think those very basic core principles and those values that helped shape his presidency and the things that he never lost sight of are what made him an effective president. And I think that's a lesson that we can apply today. There are no easy answers, but there are simple answers. And when we believe in the greatness of America, and we look at the things that the foundation of this country, personal freedom, personal liberty, coupled with individual responsibility. He believed profoundly that you achieve peace through strength. He was willing to confront communism at a point in this nation's history when it posed a great threat to freedom-loving countries around the world. And I think that those are the types of qualities that for which President Reagan will be remembered. And as, again, someone who was very impressionable at that time, he was a great inspiration to public service. I think he represented the very best of public service, got into it for all the right reasons, understood the importance of what he was doing, the issues with which he was dealing, but always had an eye toward making a difference and providing a better future for the next generation. And that's a lesson, too, that I think all of us need to remember, that sometimes we have a tendency to believe that it's about us, it's about today, and I think we always have to keep an eye on tomorrow, on the future. And what are we doing to build a better and brighter and more prosperous and stronger future for future generations? And so when I think about and remember President Reagan as we come upon his 100th birthday, those are the types of things that strike me as really standing out, Mr. President. His humility, his sense of humor, his belief in American exceptionalism. Those are the types of things that I believe will characterize, that history will write, is already written about him, but will certainly permanently impress upon my mind, my experience, the time that I've had in public life, just the types of qualities that I want to apply and want to bring to the work that we do here in the United States Senate. So I rise along with many of my colleagues today and pay tribute to our 40th President and to his family. And of course we thank them for their great service and sacrifice too, because anybody who's been in this arena knows the sacrifice that comes with public service. But we are indeed grateful for his great service to our country, for the way that he impacted so many, both here at home and around the world, and for the way that he continues through his legacy to impact generations of Americans today. Mr. President, I yield the floor.